And welcome back to the Savage Nation. Today I want to talk about vaccines. It's not all or none. It seems to me that we are going from the age of enlightenment back to the dark ages of ignorance and superstition. And so today I would like to shed some light on the darkness surrounding the issue of vaccines. Let me begin here. It's been said that we don't have a healthcare system, but we have a disease management system. I think that's true. We have a disease management system, not a healthcare system. And having established that as a fact, we have to talk about vaccines. Science illiteracy by those who resent and envy the higher degrees is at an all-time high. It's become fashionable for people to say, "Oh, college is useless." Well, in large part it is because of the brainwashing, because of the political correctness or the DEI nonsense. And so you're now trying to throw out all of knowledge, all of our knowledge. And many people who are doing that are those who never went to college and resent those who actually have higher educations in degrees, in fields rather, which require tremendous amount of thought, work, and research. This new ignorance, this new ignorance now questions reality itself. Some of them even question gravity. They question 9/11. They have an answer for everything, and it's all darkness, all of it. It's internet illogic by masses of human quail, which has replaced serious inquiry, painstaking studies, and highly difficult higher mathematics, physics, medicine, biology, and logic itself. I think I need to repeat that. Internet hatred, internet illogic by masses of uneducated people has replaced serious inquiry, painstaking studies, and highly difficult higher mathematics, physics, medicine, biology, and logic. The government industrial complex, which mandated the COVID vaccines, has led to a total breakdown in any reasonable discussion, not just about vaccines, but also about diet, about nutrition, about vitamins, about health. Aristotelian logic, once the bedrock of reason and Western civilization, has been discarded by the unlearned, uneducated. Logic itself has been thrown out the window. Every fool with a keyboard is an expert in every subject. As a result of so much propaganda in the universities, online, and in the media, the average person is now unable to sustain a discussion at the most basic level. It's all good or all bad, all right or all wrong, all healthful or all toxic, all truth or all lies. Understanding and learning takes time. It's difficult to study things, both to discover and to teach. Very hard work. So let's look at some of the facts that are known about vaccines. I'm not going to get to all of it in this discourse, this discussion, this presentation today, but I'm going to start with the polio vaccine, which saved millions of people from paralysis and death. Hillary Koprowski, probably never heard of him, Koprowski, developed the first live virus polio vaccine in 1950. It was a live, attenuated vaccine that people drank. It was not injected. In 1955, Jonas Salk developed and announced an inactivated or killed polio vaccine, 1955, which was another attenuated live oral vaccine, which was then developed by Albert Sabin, which was commonly made available in 1961. These polio vaccines saved tens of millions of people from death and or paralysis. Opposition to vaccination campaigns in Africa relating to rumors that the vaccination might induce sterility caused a resurgence of polio in Nigeria and other African nations. Some local populations refused to allow their children to receive the polio vaccine. And as a result, polio spread through these communities in Africa. This leads us to America today and to the observation that polio has reemerged in the United States and in portions of the EU where it had once been totally eliminated or eradicated. And all of this is a result of mass migration of infected and unvaccinated individuals from nations such as Africa and Central America. Polio is now back when it was once eradicated. There are other diseases that were eradicated that are now resurging, but the establishment medical community is afraid to tell you where. Immigrants and epidemics. I tried to write about that a long time ago. Nobody would publish the book. Immigrants and epidemics. That's not the sole reason, by the way. Back in the years, 1980s, I put together a book proposal called Immigrants and Epidemics. I had written, 6 books at the time, 7. They were all published, doing well. And nobody would touch it. They said, great story, great facts, but we can't publish it, even in the 80s, because it will offend so many people. Well, that led me to wanting to double down in my attempt to tell the truth about this subject. We saw diseases that have been eradicated resurging, as we do now, polio, tuberculosis, because you have millions upon millions of unvaccinated, diseased people that are poured over the borders under Joe Biden. Not solely under Joe Biden, but primarily that man. He should be put in prison for what he did to this country by breaking down our borders and creating open borders as a result of the desire to, well, there's a whole set of political reasons that the left did this. I don't want to go into them now. They're pretty fairly obvious to anyone who studied this. So, darkness. We're leaving the age of enlightenment. We're moving back into the age of ignorance and superstition, not only in the world of science, but in the world of medicine, the world of nutrition, the world of thought itself. We're moving into the new dark ages again. But I want to stay focused on vaccines, where I say it's not all or none. So here's some good news. I wrote this book in the 1980s. I spent a lot of time researching the subject of Alzheimer's disease. And what I uncovered in my research was the relationship between the toxicity of aluminum and Alzheimer's and other dementias. Aluminum was well known to be neurotoxic. So this book lay dormant for a long period of time. It was 40 years ahead of its time. I have an announcement to make right now on this program ahead of it. We don't have the book to offer. But that book was first published in 1987 in hardcover. At the time, it was 40 years ahead of its time. It was reprinted in 1989 and later in a private edition in 2007. And when this book, Reducing the Risk of Alzheimer's, first came out, it was considered out there because for the first time in a popular format, I presented the connection between aluminum and other metals with Alzheimer's disease. Even then, scientific progress in this area was advancing rapidly. Of course, the medical establishment scoffed and ignored the evidence. At the time, I was the director of the Alzheimer's Research Institute and conducting an epidemiological study on the disease. Luckily, I have found the publisher who's so interested in the subject. And they reviewed the book and they said, we're going to reprint the book exactly as it was published. I'm not going to tell you about the book now. I'm going to hold my powder or ammunition until the time the book comes out. But I'm proud to tell you that I have lived long enough to see this book be republished or about to be republished. I'm asking him to push it out as fast as possible. Long before that, again, 1982, this is still the gold standard for many parents, healing children naturally. It was about using natural approaches for natural complaints, recipes for resistors. And I talked about raise your child's IQ, improve his test performance, clear stubborn skin problems, lower your child's cholesterol, diet for prospective parents, people who couldn't conceive a child. And the book was all about avoiding toxins. And the opening line is one of my classics, and it says this: just as the undrawn sword is the mark of the best swordsman, so too is the best physician, one who relies least on synthetic drugs to heal. Great line. And I had to overcome a lot of people who didn't want to hear any of that. And so I was one of the pioneers in moving people away from the once drug-oriented medical world to nutrition, homeopathy, herbal medicine, in order to make people healthy so they wouldn't get sick and not treat the illness. This is not to say that synthetic drugs are bad. Many of them are life-saving. I wouldn't be here if it were not for antibiotics and childhood illnesses that I had. I took vaccines as a child. I'm talking about a long time ago. We all took 2 or 3 vaccines back in the 40s, 50s. But now it's reached the point of insanity where they're giving infants, I don't know how many, 16, 17, 18, 20 vaccines. The government industrial complex, which got away with virtual murder by mandating the COVID vaccines, has now led to a counter-revolution or a counter-reaction in the population where people don't want any vaccines at all. No vaccines. They have no idea what they're doing to themselves. That's why I try to tell you about polio a little earlier. In Africa, as I told you, in Nigeria, there was a superstitious idea that it would cause sterility. And so the people said no vaccines here in Nigeria, and polio resurged in polio. And if we go ahead in this country with the same type of superstition where because of Dr. Fauci and the government pharmaceutical complex and what they did to us during the COVID era of closing churches, opening bars, people are going to go and live in the new dark ages. It's not all or nothing. It's not all good or bad. It's not all right or all wrong. It's not all healthful or all toxic. It's not all truth or all lies. It takes time. It's hard work to think. Understanding and learning takes time. Most people don't have the ability to learn nor the desire to learn. So again, I try to talk a little bit about the polio vaccine. I began with Hillary Kaprowski, who developed the first live virus polio vaccine in 1950. I talked about the live oral vaccine developed by Sabin was the last one, but before Sabin, it was the great doctor Jonas Salk who developed and announced an inactivated killed polio vaccine, 1955. And then we had the oral vaccine brought in was Albert Sabin. And these vaccines saved tens of millions of lives from death and paralysis. I don't know if you know what it was like to live during a polio epidemic, but I lived in the 1950s. I was a young kid. And we used to see pictures of children in iron lungs. They lost the ability, the muscles weren't working anymore. Poliomyelitis. The virus attacks the myelin sheath of nerves. And so people lose the ability to use their muscles. And they become paralyzed. And they couldn't even breathe. They were put into iron lungs, which gave them the artificial ability to breathe. It was the worst, horrible nightmare to live through as a child. Fearing we'd wind up in an iron lung. We were afraid to go into swimming pools. It was a nightmare. It was a very bad time. And then along came the great doctor, It was a lifesaver. It was a dream. Who was it? You probably don't even know his name anymore. Jonas Salk, 1955. Jewish, by the way. Sabin was Jewish, by the way. For those of you who hate Jews, which I see all over the internet today, which is shocking. The ignorance has now spread to racism on a level I never thought I would see in the United States of America. I thought it was all over after Hitler died. But apparently Hitler lives here in the United States of America under the guise of patriotism. Not all patriots see it that way, but unfortunately too many of the ignorant do. And so we live with the fear of winding up in an iron lung. And then along came the great vaccine by Jonas Salk. And we all got the vaccine in our schools. We lined up and we all got the polio vaccine. And guess what? Polio was virtually eradicated in the United States of America because of the genius work of Dr. Jonas Salk and others and the Salk vaccine. It was an inactivated or killed polio vaccine, by the way. It was actually a polio virus inactivated that was given to children and others. And we didn't fear the iron lung anymore. So now we come to today. And now we're living in a new time. The COVID vaccine was extremely controversial. It was foisted upon the masses and forced down our throats. Some evil politicians used it for a political advantage and to suppress the population from any discussion whatsoever. Idiots in the media like Howard Stern said that people who didn't take the vaccine should be cast out of the country. You can't believe the things that the dumb people were saying. They made millions of dollars being dumb and stupid. They said, you must be vaccinated. If you don't get vaccinated, you shouldn't be allowed to go out of your house. Can you imagine people like that? They're still in business. They're still in the media. Well, now on the other side, we have those who say all vaccines are no good. All vaccines are dangerous. They don't understand it. Ignorance is like a virus in the country today. Ignorance has now migrated to the masses to an extent I never thought possible. So having laid the groundwork for what I want to talk about today, I want to talk about vaccines per se. It's not all or none. Some are very necessary. Some are very toxic. And just allowing the average person to make up their own mind is a mistake. Listen to me, I'll repeat it again. If we let this reach the point where you have the ability to say, well, I don't want this, I don't want that, and I don't care, I won't get infected because I smoke cigarettes or I run around the block, you might get a disease and spread it to others, maybe in your own family. It's a very difficult decision to be made about which disease and which vaccine we are talking about. I'm not talking about every vaccine or every disease. So there's a lot of ignorance out there, and people say that one of the reasons all vaccines are toxic is because they contain aluminum. Well, I know a lot about aluminum. As I said to you, I wrote this book in the 80s. It's going to be republished in the next 3 months called Reducing the Risk of Alzheimer's. It's not only about the dangers of aluminum, but aluminum has long been known to be neurotoxic and was yet put into foods and still is in foods, antiperspirants, and even in vaccines today. Aluminum is highly toxic. It's implicated in a large number of neurological diseases. But it's not the only cause of Alzheimer's disease. I'm not saying that. There's considerable evidence in both experimental animals and man implicating a disorder of aluminum metabolism in Alzheimer's disease. And I'm going to save this for the time that the book comes out because it's too much information for us to talk about right now. There's so many other elements, but there is still aluminum in vaccines, which I want to talk about for a minute. Aluminum salts are still used in some vaccines. It is said that it is used to strengthen and enhance the body's immune response to the vaccine. Not all vaccines contain aluminum, but you should know that aluminum has been a standard portion of vaccines for decades. They claim that aluminum is used in vaccines for a reason, and it's typically aluminum hydroxide, aluminum phosphate, or alum, which are said to boost the vaccine's effectiveness. And this is important for vaccines that contain only small parts of a pathogen, such as proteins, rather than a whole virus or bacteria. And the doctors and scientists know that without aluminum or such an adjuvant, these fragments might not create a strong enough immune response to protect the person from disease. And so they argue that aluminum strengthens the immune response, sustains antigen release, triggers inflammation. And they claim that aluminum is very safe. And then they claim that infants receive far more aluminum from breast milk, about 7 milligrams over 6 months, and formula, up to 117 milligrams over 6 months, than they do from vaccines, about 4.4 milligrams over 6 months. But that's, in a way, a false argument. Because if they're getting aluminum through their mother's breast milk, it means she's been contaminated with aluminum. If they're getting it from formula, it's because the manufacturers of formula are using aluminum when they shouldn't. I'm moving for zero aluminum in formula, is what I'd like to see. Now, they argue, and I don't accept it, that the body is efficient at processing and eliminating aluminum. I don't agree. They say that aluminum adjuvants have been used safely for over 70 years. Nonsense. And they say that extensive studies have not found a link between them and long-term health problems. Totally false, as I elucidate in this book. Totally false. But having said that, vaccines still use aluminum, not all, some. Vaccines that routinely contain aluminum adjuvants are hepatitis A vaccines, hepatitis B vaccines, DTP vaccines, that's diphtheria, tetanus, and acellular pertussis. Pneumococcal vaccines contain aluminum, HPV vaccines. But there are vaccines which do not contain aluminum. MMR, measles, mumps, and rubella, do not contain aluminum. Varicella, chickenpox, none. Rotavirus vaccines, no aluminum. mRNA vaccines, COVID-19 vaccines do not contain aluminum. Isn't that wonderful? But they don't talk about the dangers of the spike protein. We're not worried about that. And so that's a little background on aluminum in vaccines. But what about mercury? We used to hear about autism and mercury, and Kennedy's going to do a big thing on mercury. Well, first of all, mercury has been removed from vaccines as of 1999. They began phasing it out. And since 2001, no childhood vaccines routinely recommended in the U.S. have contained thimerosal as a preservative. Thimerosal was used in multi-dose vaccine vials to prevent the growth of harmful bacteria, but they also contain mercury. Thimerosal. It's removed from vaccines given in the United States, including all routine childhood shots. However, certain multi-dose flu vaccines still contain a small amount of thimerosal. Okay. However, you can ask for preservative-free versions. I, for one, have never taken a flu vaccine. I never will. I'm an older man. Every 3 months you get take a flu vaccine if you're over 60. What are you, crazy? I don't want it. Take a shingles vaccine and won't take it. So don't think I'm pushing vaccines. I am not. But I'm telling you that by saying all vaccines are dangerous, you're making a huge error for yourself and for the nation. I'm telling you, thinking is difficult. Thinking takes time. Thought is hard. Learning is harder. Discovery is harder. Science is hard work. And most of the ignorant people out there who have no college at all have now reached the point where, because of fake news about politics, they have now said all news is fake, all learning is fake, all science is fake, all medicine is fake, etc. And now they're dragging us back into the dark ages where nothing can be known. So you have to know the difference between ethyl mercury, which was found in vaccines, and methyl mercury, which is toxic, found in high concentrations in certain fish, like tuna and swordfish. I've been eating tuna fish, by the way, since I'm a child. It's never done anything to me. They say, watch out for mercury in the fish. The higher the fish, big fish eats little fish. I don't know. I've never found any problems from the tuna fish yet. But what about autism and aluminum and mercury, rather, excuse me. What about autism and mercury? That's something Kennedy is big on. Kennedy is doing a fairly good job, but he doesn't have to run the Department of Human. What's he running this? He never should have been given that job. Never. It was a huge mistake on the part of Donald Trump. Kennedy is way over his head. He's not a scientist. He has no training in science. And you're just doing push-ups doesn't make you a health expert, by the way. Just because you have great muscles at 47 or 55 doesn't mean that you know everything about science that is required to be known to run HHS, which is huge and huge. When Trump came along, to get political for a second, and he appointed Kennedy to HHS, and Kennedy said that we're going to fire everybody in the building, I went on the air and I said to you, that's the biggest mistake he could ever make. Not all scientists are political operatives. There are some really great scientists in the NIH. You can't throw them all out just because you don't like the politics of some of the people who ran HHS, like those involved in the National Institute of Health, like Fauci. You can't say all scientists are propagandists and they should all be fired. He made a huge error because he didn't have the scope necessary to run the HHS. It was way beyond his abilities, his knowledge. He had no knowledge. He has no degree in science. How can he run HHS? How can the man run HHS if he's never done basic science, never did one experiment? Did he ever work in a laboratory or even knows what laboratory science is? No. So you say, everyone in laboratory science is a Dr. Frankenstein. Fire them all. Stupid. This is the problem with revolutionaries and revolutions. You shoot everybody in a fascist dictatorship who opposes you. And in a non-fascist dictatorship, but a dictatorship of the mind, you fire everybody who you think is your enemy. Huge mistake. So we'll get back to now mercury. It's been eliminated since 2001 in childhood vaccines. And he's going to do some research. He's not going to do the research himself. He's going to do it on mercury and autism. Now, autism rates have continued to rise even after mercury-based preservatives like thimerosal were removed from childhood vaccines. Autism rates are still going up. Why? Why are autism rates going up anyway? Well, I have my own thoughts on that, but they're so controversial that I dare not even state them. But I will state it in a mild way so that I'm not condemned to the gulag once again. I've been in the gulag anyway most of my life, despite all of my accomplishments, achievements, and publications. I have been in the gulag. I've never met Kennedy where I could give him advice on alternative medicine. I've reached out. It's like a dead letterbox. In fact, the entire Trump administration has become a dead letterbox to me with the new administration. They don't want to know anything that I have to offer them in anywhere, even though I created Borders, Language, and Culture, which launched Donald Trump into the presidency, persona non grata. He may not even know I exist or that I'm still living, which is a loss for humanity and for the world. And I'm glad that you, my audience, is here to listen to some of this intelligence and reason that I am presenting to you, because it takes a lot of work to produce these discussions. I'm not just speaking out of thin air. So we've gone from the age of enlightenment and we're moving back to the dark ages of ignorance and superstition. Well, I'm going to pause right now and tell you this is part one of my discourse on vaccines. I've talked about a number of things: aluminum, mercury, autism. Just scratch the surface on it. There will be a part two on this Michael Savage YouTube channel and on X in the future. I don't know exactly when. But remember the key point: vaccines, it's not all or none. In a childish way, you could say, don't throw the baby out with the bathwater. Well, that's exactly what I'm saying to you. Let's not go back to the dark ages and throw out all learning, all knowledge, all science, and all medicine because of a few bad people and a few very, very, very greedy corporations and some very, very evil, bad politicians. Vaccines, it's not all or none. I thank you for listening. And I hope you got something out of this today. Please don't believe everything you read on the internet. I have found it to be filled with the most vile, disgusting, backwards, dark ages, thinking, non-thinking people I could imagine. Everyone with a keyboard is now an expert. If Einstein came along and presented the theory of relativity, some unwashed, moronic bastard somewhere on a couch in his dirty house would say he doesn't know anything about physics or reality because he's a Jew. That's what you would get today from the Jew haters out there. I'm telling you how it is. This is how bad it has become. All science, all learning, all knowledge is now questioned by the most ignorant, bigoted people imaginable, who are now empowered. For some reason, they're empowered with their bigotry, which will be a loss for all of civilization. That's it for today. If you like what you see and you see what you like, if you like what you hear and you hear what you like, by all means, subscribe to my YouTube channel. And that way you'll get notifications when I go live. I do not have a regular time. I do it when I'm ready to do it. I generally try to do them on Sunday mornings. I used to do God talks in this time slot. But I'll tell you something right now. To me, knowledge, true knowledge, is very godly. And ignorance, hatred, and bigotry is the devil himself. Knowledge is power. Try to think before you type a screed on the internet, because you're not advancing humanity, you're not advancing science, you're not advancing knowledge, you're not advancing anything. You're just embarrassing yourself with your hatred and bigotry. That's all I have to say. I could end it by saying, bless God. God has given us the power to think and reason. It separates us from the animals. Although, as I told you, as an animal watcher and observer, I'm more impressed with most wild animals than I am with human beings. I have been for a very long time. I learn more from watching a flight of pelicans than I do from reading the internet. Last night, I went to a cocktail party fundraiser for people who care for wild animals who are injured. Say, oh, boo-hoo, let them all die. Wild animals, what kind of hippies are they? Well, they're good hippies. I have no idea what the politics were, but they give their time and their effort to saving animals that fall out of birds that fall out of trees. Pelican who, got injured or whatever. They're beautiful people. A turtle that wandered over across the road, had a broken leg. Hawks with a broken wing. These are wonderful people. I don't know what their politics are. I didn't ask anybody what their politics were. No one asked me what my politics were. But we all came together because we care for wild animals. We give money, or some of them actually care for them. They're good people. And yet there are people on the internet who would say, well, if the animal is injured, let it die. Kill it and eat it. Just kill it. It's an animal. Eat it. Yeah, right. God said, kill them all. It's all here. Anything that crawls, swims, and is in the air, kill it. Kill it. Eat it. Rip its feathers out. Shoot it. Because I'm an American. And I got a gun. And I can kill anything. That's what I am, a real American. I don't believe in saving animals. That's for fags, fairies, and weirdos. You think it doesn't exist? It exists. The same backward thinking throwbacks are all over the internet with the most vile racism I have ever seen in my life. You call them in the old days the unwashed masses. They're not the unwashed masses. There's something else. There's a word I can't use on this broadcast. And I would say that this rock has more intelligence than most of the intelligence that I see about politics on the internet, let alone about science and medicine. There is no science and medicine that's acceptable to the throwbacks. So I've tried to bring you some knowledge, some learning, some reason, some thought. It's food for thought. I didn't sell you a vaccine. I didn't tell you to take vaccines. I said to you, vaccines, it's not all or none. That's what I said to you. It means you have to give it thought. You have to think about the vaccine. And to have a government say all vaccines should be eliminated is insanity. If it was up to me, I would vaccinate every illegal alien against their will and then deport them so they don't go back to their own countries. I couldn't understand this. How in the world you could let 30 million people into a nation, many of whom were infected with illnesses, who were coming here to get free treatment, by the way, and let them infect hospital staff. And the hospitals couldn't refuse them. The hospitals couldn't say no. They'd be fired. The hospital would lose federal funding if they had said no to any illegal alien. Over the border, they came by the tens of millions under Joe Biden, who committed crimes against humanity in doing so. And now we are facing the results of the liberal ethos of open borders. We are facing it now with a resurgence of illnesses that had once been eradicated, as I said in this broadcast. Tuberculosis once eradicated. Polio once eradicated. There are others. Other diseases, just walk them right over the border. Chagas' disease. You got malaria resurging in America because of infected, filthy immigrants. I use the word. There's a word for it. Filthy, infected immigrants bringing their third world diseases into our once beautiful nation. And just closing the borders after they've entered the country is a little too late. What are you going to do with the 30 million who are here who are diseased? Put them on a pedestal as the ACLU does? They're all sacred immigrants who come here to work. They come here to work the system. They don't come here to work. And for everyone who works, there's 5 at home who don't work. And that's why when you go to an emergency room as an American who pays taxes, you go to the back of the line, not them. If you speak English, you look down upon in most hospitals today. You don't press 1 for English anymore. If you speak English, you're called a racist in our own nation by the vermin who have taken over this country. But now I'm bordering into what I really want to talk about at another time, which is immigrants and epidemics, which I will do at another time, not today. Today it was vaccines, not all or nothing. And again, I refer you to the fact that I was against the use of toxins back in the 80s. For those of you who don't know who I am, before you lecture me, I was writing books before you were nursing at your mother's toxic breast, reducing the risk of Alzheimer's, pointed out all the dangers in the environment that are still there and still effing up our brains. If you look at the amyloid plaques in the brain, you will see that there's a core of aluminum in many of them. But I have to save this for when the book comes back out. So, folks, think carefully before you don't listen to a doctor. They're not all bad. They're not all stupid. They're not all bigots. They're not all out to get you. Make up your own mind, but do a little studying before you make up your mind. For God's sakes, don't just say all vaccines are bad. All medicine is bad. All doctors are liars. Some of them are extremely dedicated people who want to help you. Do I have to tell you that? Unfortunately, I do. And so therefore, fortunately, I did. Again, thank you very much for being with me today on this broadcast. And I do want you to subscribe to my YouTube channel because I want to cross 100,000. I would like you to go to my Instagram account, my X account, my Facebook account, and sign up for them because not enough people are getting real information. I'm one of the only people out there with so much to offer who doesn't have the vast audience that I deserve. I mean, a couple 100,000, yes, but I should have a couple of 100 million people listening to this broadcast and others, not a couple 100,000. We have the most vile, ignorant, bigoted, hateful people with tens of millions of followers. If a girl shows you her ass, she could have more followers than Albert Einstein if he was alive. If Jesus Christ himself came back, he would have fewer followers than a slut showing you her behind. Have a nice day. Did I get your attention? Good, I hope so. Have a nice day again. Have a